Jonathan, thanks very much for coming on the show, mate. We appreciate it. Always nice to chat.
Pleased to be here, mate.
We've got some fun stuff, obviously, to talk about in the show, which we'll get to later on. Obviously, Project Vertical, something we really want to get into with you. I think we all followed that on social media and stuff like that. So that was awesome. So we'll get into that a wee bit later. But just getting off, me and James had spoke before, and we kind of been discussing that relationship again about like strength and conditioning, the athlete to coach. So just want to bring James in. I think James has got a few things he wants to bring up and get your thoughts on.
Cool. Go on, do it.
I went blank. Obviously, I've kind of stepped back for the strength and conditioning stuff up. I was talking to somebody the other day, an actual boxing coach it was, and we were talking about how back in the day, and I done this myself, the boxing coach was almost responsible for the athlete's strength conditioning stuff, and like years ago it would have been, they would refer to it as like floor exercises, so they'd have their running, and then it was all body weight stuff, and then there was arguments obviously when weights became a wee bit more prevalent, guys getting on about weights, slowing athletes down and stuff like that. That's kind of since been disbanded, but a lot of these guys are still, maybe not at the elite level, but a lot of these guys are still, they're skills coach, so they're trying to coach these guys boxing or martial arts, and also strength and conditioning. And you must come across that where guys, whereas all the elite gyms have got specialist strength and conditioning guys coming in, because it's what I found it was to keep up with the reading and up to date with what's happening in that field of strength conditioning, never mind nutrition and stuff like that. You're having to study all the time, and then when you start spending time doing that, then I was losing time with the actual martial arts side of it, which again in MMA, because the sport's it's still in its infancy. MMA, it's less than 30 years old or whatever. It's developing so fast. What do you think about these guys that think they can coach everything? Like they can be, it's like that jack of all trades, master of none type thing, I guess. But where do you stand on that?
Same place as you, mate. Exactly the same place as you. It's I mean, if you look at it from the flip side of things, and this would be if somebody like me in it's a profession, you know. I've spent years training, and I've spent years learning master's degrees, this thing, that thing, stuff that I don't go on about, but it's all there, you know, and it's all, I've got knowledge in it. And if you're going to spend all that time training in something and learning about something, it's almost offensive to the other aspects of the game to pretend that you know all about them. Because how many times can I train in how many different things? So you've just said it yourself. If you spend all the years that you have mastering your craft, the experiential stuff that you've put in, you know, the work that you've put in yourself, the learning that you've had, and then the academic learning that you've put in, the autodidactic learning that I know that you put in, where you're reading, you're learning, you're thinking about this all the time from a coaching perspective. How could you possibly then put that into nutrition, and then put that into strength and conditioning, and then put that into the psychological aspects, and then maybe the recovery aspects and all the rest of it? You could have a good grasp of it. You could have a good understanding of it. Same as I've got, you know, from interaction in the gym, when I come in and look at athletes as a strength and conditioning coach, I'm watching the way they move. I'm watching the way that they're perhaps producing force. I'm watching the recovery times that they've got. They're watching their heart rate, etc., etc. But I can't watch their technique. You know, I can watch it and I can say he's shite or he's great or whatever. But really, I'm looking at it from a very from my own perspective, which is way further down than yours. So I think to flip that on its head, it'd be like me setting up my own strength and conditioning gym with the nutritional aspect and all the rest of it, and then claiming to be able to kind of coach guys in striking and finesse and the technical capabilities that we need. I might have a grasp of it, I might have an understanding of it, I might know how to put together the basics, but to try and develop an athlete from my strength and conditioning perspective with the technical coaching that I've got, it would be impossible. So I don't think it's something that's actually all that possible. I think you could have a very good understanding of a lot of these things and a very good baseline knowledge, and the gyms and the try to think of the fighters and the situations I've worked in. I've got to be able to understand what your job is as a technical coach, as a head coach, as a kind of the captain of that ship. And I've got to understand what all the different things that you're looking at in order to be able to apply what I'm applying. But to try and apply all of them, it's gonna fail, isn't it? And I think even as you said at the outset there, is that you've stepped away from it because you've seen that, not because it's not something that you've got. Maybe it's about time, certainly, but it's not. You've also got people around you where you're able to say, okay, I get what's going on here, but I have to hand that off to somebody so that then I can apply myself fully to what I'm doing. So it's not about not having the scope or the understanding. It's about being able to apply yourself properly to what it is that you're the master of. So yeah, the short answer is I don't think it's doable. I don't think that you could be. I think by the time you got to a point where you had mastery of all those different skills, you'd probably be pretty feeble in a few other ways.
Is it something? Sorry, when you go, James.
That's pretty much what I found out, man. 'Cause I was into it for a while, obviously, when I was still competing and stuff and programming my athletes, kind of strength conditioning stuff. But it gets to a stage where, and I don't know if this was just a personal thing, but I had to make a decision to bring guys in like yourself and stuff to create this little support network. Basically, because I don't think it's possible to be world class at more than one thing. Maybe some special people can, but I don't think you can be a world class fighter and a world class coach at the same time. I don't think that the guys who are world class at coaching martial arts could be world class performance or strength and conditioning coaches. And I think you're starting to see that, obviously, more and more in the UK now. America's always been ahead of us with that kind of stuff just because of the money in sports, their influences with American football and shit like that. But you should be getting more opportunity for guys like yourself who, especially in combat sports, because you're on the mats as well, you train martial arts. There should be more opportunities for guys like yours to get involved with martial arts. I know you work with our guys and Ian's guys at Food Dog, and I know you worked with Billy Joe Saunders before, obviously. So is the combat sports and side of strength conditioning you'd like to maybe specialise in a wee bit more than other sports, just because you're obviously passionate about that as well, because you compete in jiu-jitsu and stuff?
Yeah. I mean, to a certain degree, that's already what I do. Is specialise in that. I've got my own company. And I work for a company in America called Complete Human Performance. And on their cards, I am the combat sports specialist. And through that particular company was where I got noticed for what I was doing. So I look after a lot of BJJ players and a lot of judo guys, actually, and a lot of military specialists, where there's quite a lot of crossover there in a certain sense. We can come back to that later if you want. But there's what I was doing was very specific with that company. What I do with my company is a little bit more open. I take on all comers if it interests me, to put it bluntly. But at that end, I was getting interest. I was working I was in communication with a guy called David Stacker. David works with Billy Joe and with Tyson through Ben and through the Engel camp as well. So there was a specialism there, and I was writing a lot of things. I wrote a lot of articles. I wrote a bit of a book, part of a book that's done really quite well. And I wrote the combat sports specialism side of that book, etc. So I have done that for quite some time. But it's not something. I'm terrible at marketing as well. I don't have a website. I don't have any of that stuff going on. It's all word of mouth. So it's not something that people would necessarily know about. I mean, they know I'm a strength and conditioning coach, but not know kind of what way I'm applying myself in that. But it's also coming back to you saying about fighters and about the relative use of MMA. It's only now emerging, and you'll have seen it yourself from your side of the fence, and even from what you're describing a minute ago. It's only now really emerging in MMA much more so than boxing, that there is a role for a strength and conditioning coach, that there is a role for a specialist nutritionist. Fighters are only just starting to kind of get their teeth into the idea that that's something that actually can serve them well. And if they have a kind of what we like to call that multidisciplinary team around them, that they can then settle. Going back to that original discussion, they can then settle and do what it is that they do best, which is just to train, get things done. If they're trying to think about the same as you were trying to think about, okay, I've got my technical coaching going on, I've got my game plan to think about, then I've got to think about my strength and conditioning, then I'm going to have to learn about nutrition, etc., etc. Then if they hit burnout quite quickly, or there's they're not ticking all the boxes. If we're able as teams to kind of produce an environment where they can just be the fighter, then the fighters themselves excel, and we've seen that over and over. But that's something that's only just becoming apparent to fighters slowly now, and a little bit of it, which kind of speaks against the ability to do the job right, is it's almost become fashionable as well. It's kind of cool to have a strength and conditioning coach. It's kind of cool to have a nutritionist, which belies the fact that a lot of fighters don't really know what that means. They just want somebody on board. They want to work with an S&C coach, quote unquote. And when you say to them, okay, this is what that really means. You go, oh, no. I read about something on fucking whatever, Instagram or whatever, and I was supposed to be doing fucking X, Y, and Z, stupid, bollocks. And then you spend a lot of your time as an S&C coach then backtracking and saying, listen, I know you've read this blog. I know you're watching this guy on YouTube. I know that you've seen X fighter do some mad shiny stuff, but really that's not what you need. So then you end up in a kind of a backtrack of trying to explain to them that, the basics, same as yoga, I'm sure, the basics are the absolute, how can I do a flying armbar, James? Well, maybe you want to fucking learn how to posture up first, or maybe you want to, you want to get the basics under, et cetera, et cetera. And that happens to us as well. It's they're talking about, very, very granularized detail in S&C that they don't understand. And then you as a coach then have to take them back to the beginning. So, and I've covered off about 3 different problems there in it, but one of them being a specialist is that then to be a specialist, you've got to have people at the other end of that specialism who understand what your specialism is before the two marry up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, my next question was just going to be what's kind of like the biggest problems you're finding working with fighters, but again, you've kind of just nailed it there. It's they're seeing stuff online, thinking they need to be in that. I remember when the UFC All Access shows done that for a while, where everybody needed a sledgehammer and a tire. Like if you weren't doing that and submerging yourself in a wheelie bin full of ice water, you weren't training right. And
that's right. Parachutes on your back and all that kind of shit. Yeah, actually, a good example of where it goes tits up and where it has gone tits up is at the highest level. And that's where you think that it would be, that you'd have kind of gotten past all that kind of stuff. But you mentioned Billy Joe earlier, and not a great example, actually, but I worked with Tyson Fury on the first Deontay Wilder fight. I don't know if you did know that or not, but I worked the conditioning in that camp remotely, did it from here, I didn't go across there. So every day on the phone to Ben, I needed all kinds of heart rate. It makes it more difficult, obviously, not being there, because I need all kind of data. I need them to measure things right. I'm aware that what I'm asking them to do, they can't actually execute the way I would have it executed were I there. So there's already a problem in that sense. But an example of a shiny thing there, I hope I don't get fucking beaten up online for this, is that they took him to Big Bear. So, and with how many camps have we seen happen in Big Bear? Because it's high altitude and it's sexy to be, go up in that romanticized kind of it's a real struggle up here. It's really difficult. And of course it's difficult. It's because you've gone to altitude and you can't fucking breathe. So if you've gone to altitude and you can't breathe, and it takes 4 to 6 weeks to actually acclimatize to that environment, then all your training while you're there is going to be subpar, isn't it? You're going to run out of steam early. You're not going to be able to get the sparring sessions in. When you do get the sparring sessions in, again, James, think of this technically, you're not producing, you're learning shitty technique because everything's under terrible fatigue. Nothing's crisp. So everything's tiring, which means if you're working as a decent coach, those sessions have to get shorter and shorter to maintain, the technique that you want. So whilst this dude's up there spending 6 weeks, beating his chest about how he's a fucking martyr to the cause, he's not actually doing any useful training. And then the second part is the science tells us, which is something that they're way behind on, is that once you get back down to sea level, all that acclimatization, all that useful stuff, if you like, we won't go into the detail there, that just wears off after about 48 hours anyway. So if you're the biggest fighter in the world, fighting the biggest fight in the world, and you come down, you're not getting 2 days. You've got to be down out of that, back in Vegas, back on sea level, for at least a week to do the presses. So everything that you went up there to do that for is wiped out. Day 2, you've got 5 days left. You've no longer get any benefit from having been up there, and you've wasted 6 weeks trying to get used to fighting at an altitude that actually isn't practical. So from my perspective, I spent 3 weeks saying, get the fuck out of Big Bear. And they're saying, well, you're just a strength and conditioning coach. Get the fuck out of you fuck off. So the thing goes back and forward. And obviously, I'm not saying it like I'm saying it now. I'm presenting as much data as I can and politely suggesting these things, saying, think about it this way. They're talking about, well, why don't we get fucking 16 oxygen canisters, get it in the room with them, tape all the doors shut, and create a ground level scenario up there. And I'm like, well, why don't you just tell him to get out of Big Bear? Oh, well, he really likes the fact that we're up here. So he's bought into an idea, bought into a notion, bought into a romance that being up there and doing these things is exciting and it's going to make him, he's going to come out sharpened like a fucking diamond out of coal and all the rest of it. Really, he's just really making his camp shit. They got it in the end. Obviously didn't say well done to me. They just said, we're not in Big Bear anymore. Shut the fuck up about it now. That was it. So, and you know how the fight went.
Yeah.
I'd worked my ass off to get him conditioned enough. And whether anybody agrees with me or not, I know that what I did certainly helped him. I joked about that online with you, I think, the other day, so it helped him get back up off the canvas because his conditioning was through the roof because they were producing these sessions every day, but they didn't have a clue why. They bought into me, they bought into what I knew, and they bought into how I was presenting it, and they just kind of did what they were told, for want of a less egotistical sounding. I don't know if we really mean it that way, but they did what I was asking them to do, and they got the benefits out of it. But I know that they don't know why they did it. I know that they don't know what my rationale really was. I know that I presented them a lot of science. I know that through 3-page documents, so I can rationalize what I'm saying. They've read 3 lines on it. Fuck it, David says he's cool, let's just go with it. So those are the problems, man. Those are the issues. And if you're talking about some of the best fighters in the world, which doesn't necessarily mean that they've got the best understanding of everything, then when you bring it down to kind of a club level and you're trying to tell such and such fighter B, no, actually, Billy Joe or Tyson or whoever, they're actually doing it wrong. They're going to look at me like I'm a fucking tool and say, well, obviously Johnny's a retard, let's go and speak to this other guy. So it becomes quite a difficult thing to manage in that sense. So there's some problems.
Yeah.
Could go on all night about
that. Could I ask you something about, just when you're talking about altitude there, would that only be applicable then in the reverse scenario? So if a fighter then normally trains at sea level but is fighting, let's say, Mexico City, which is extremely high altitude, would it only make sense to do it in that sense, to go and train in the environment you're going to fight in?
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense to me. Or another way we could have done it, which I suggested to them, which logistically would have worked, but wouldn't have been super practical, but would have solved the problem, was that they went up and they trained up Big Bear, because you can come down, it takes about 2 hours to come down out of that mountain area, down into an area where things are a bit more normalized, and they could train up and down. So they could come down and do some sessions to get some good sessions out and go back up and try and get used to it. But again, it came back down to that week where they were just sitting at ground level anyway. doing presses all around Vegas. It was like, well, that was a waste of everybody's time. I mean, it's not like it's that's the first time that's happened. I'm using that as an example, but like I say, people gone on about that for years. Well, I got the benefit because I went up to 3,000 meters altitude. And you're like, well, you don't really get any benefit at all. You just shouted about it a lot, you know. So.
Yeah, because it is quite a famous place for training. I think Alvarez, Tito Ortiz, obviously famously used to do all these camps there.
Yeah. So and he lived there. I think he lived there, so that was okay.
Yeah, well, he lived there. And just something you mentioned about there is obviously, if you're telling a fighter or the fighter's coaches stuff they're potentially doing wrong, is that a constant worry that they just then jump to a strength and conditioning coach who's a yes man as such? Yeah.
I mean, it's a worry in a sense that, you know, bottom line, like everybody, you know, I've got to pay my bills, so I need clients, you know, and I need people to work with me. But I'm not very good, and never have been very good at saying, at kind of stroking people's egos. And, you know, if people want to jump ship because they see something shiny, then they'll get told that, okay, you're jumping ship because you're seeing something shiny. That's up to you. And, you know, nobody likes to get told that, so they just jump ship. But the reality of it is a worry. It's a worry for them. From my perspective, I worry for them in the sense that I want a fighter to get the most out of what it is that I can give them. And if they're distracted, or if they don't buy into the process, it doesn't matter how right I am anyway. If they don't buy into me and what it is that I can deliver, they're not really going to get the best out of it anyway. So that actually comes down to sometimes just a personality fit, and, you know, whether they want to work with me as an individual. And that's clearly not always going to be the case, no matter who you are, what your personality is like. So yeah, you'll have had that, James, I'm sure, where you've got fighters that come into the gym and, you know, you're a coach of high repute and regard. But there's going to be fighters that come in and you know you could get a lot out of them, but it just didn't click, and that's it. You know, it doesn't work. There's nothing you can do about that, you know.
Yeah, we get that. We also get guys coming in, fairly common, and desperate to fight. Like, I never understood that whole desperate to fight thing. And because they're not doing certain things in the gym, they're not performing sparring or live drills and stuff, you try to tell some of these guys they're not ready to fight and not ready to compete, and they'll just go somewhere else. And then you turn up at On Top or at Headhunters, and there's that guy got a fight for another team, and he's getting dominated, or he's getting knocked out or getting submitted. So it's almost like a matter of integrity, I think, with you. It's like you would be a sellout if you were just letting these guys tell you what to do, whereas you're like I've put the time in, I've got the experience. It's a tried and tested fucking formula we've got here. If you listen to what I'm telling you and do what you're meant to do, everyone will work out. But some people just like to take shortcuts, I think.
That's it. I mean, that's a nail on the head there, actually. That's the bottom line. Generally, when they see the shiny things or when they see something else that they want, it's because they've seen a shortcut, I think, anyway, you know. Because there's no way that you're going to get... I mean, what I do as a strength and conditioning coach is really very basic, in my opinion. And this is another problem with S&C coaches in my mind, is they see themselves as being in the sense of a hierarchy within the gym, if you like. You know, I would see James as for obvious reasons as being he's numero uno at the top of that hierarchy in terms of coaching. And a strength coach comes under that in terms of hierarchy, way under it. You know, we want to get them stronger for a few obvious reasons. One, and the one that I think should be at the very front of it, is we want them to be safer. So the whole point of them being stronger is they develop a physical integrity so that they can take more, let's say. So they're more robust for the course of not just the fight they're preparing for, but for their career. And then we've got the other aspects of it, which is about force production and about, you know, isometric strength under you know, for the different elements of the sport. But that comes way under the technical instruction. It doesn't matter how strong and how robust and how many fucking bicep curls they can do or how long they can hold a certain position if they can't fucking fight, you know, if they can't actually practice the sport properly. So I'd say secondary, if not tertiary, and that's a problem I think that a lot of strength coaches have, is they've got this idea, they've bought into the same kind of romance that fighters have, that whole sledgehammer thing in the UFC. and they've got an understanding in their minds that they're on a par, that they're as important. So then you get this kind of idea, which again I come up against a lot, is that the fighters themselves have a notion that they want to spend a lot of time doing strength and conditioning. They want to do as much as possible because they want to be big and strong and intimidating, and they've realised that their deadlift's quite good, and so they've got it in their minds that they want to get a 2.5, 3 times body weight deadlift. So then it becomes my job as a coach to say that's irrelevant. All right, if you're a power lifter, but after a couple of times body weight, the capability of deadlifting a couple of times your body weight, none of it's applicable. You're not going to get, a guy that can lift 2 times body weight deadlift off the floor. Yeah, we're going to be able to argue that posturally he's got some strength, he's got all kinds of things going on that were going to be useful for him in the MMA scenario. But given 3 times body weight deadlift, has he got any more going for him? No. But you get this argument from these guys, I want to be stronger, I want to be, and it's a lot of kind of backtracking and saying, my job is to get you as capable as I can from that perspective for your sport, not to get you as strong and as buff and as good in the gym as possible. It's not even important, and that's a big, that's a problem.
It seems like the relationship, because obviously you guys, Jonathan, you work with guys at the gym, so you guys obviously have a good relationship, and I'm presuming that works well. How important is that then, for both points of view, that between obviously skill coach, strength and conditioning coach, athlete, that everyone can sort of work together harmoniously with egos removed?
It's massive, I think. We've had coaches before, strength and conditioning guys, and they almost try and take over. And some of the stuff that Jonathan mentioned there, we've had guys going away, and the coaches know, the strength conditioning coaches will know what days we spar and stuff like that. And you'll have guys coming in on the night of sparring, and they've killed themselves during the day at strength conditioning, whether it's hitting 1 rep maxes or anything that kind of fries their central nervous system. So they come in at night, and they're 6 weeks out for a fight, they have a bad spar, and that starts affecting their confidence. And if you let that go on, pretty soon things snowball, and they end up not confident. The weight cut gets in their mind and everything else. But with the best guys like Jonathan and stuff like that, you're in communication. Like as soon as he programs anything for the guys that we've got, I get the program, I know what's happening. I know I can go to him at any point and say, like, he's maybe doing too much, or he's not doing enough, and he's struggling with this, or I'm changing his schedule so he's not sparring on a Friday anymore. We're doing a skill session on a Friday, but the Wednesday's going to be a bigger night and stuff like that. And some of these other strength conditioning coaches, it's almost like they have to make it about them. Like their Instagram is, and their social media is, I'm working with this guy, this world champion, I'm working with this UFC fighter, and I'm like, you're spending 45 minutes a week with this guy. They refer to him as like my fighter, and I'm like, I'm with this guy 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. It's me that he phones when he's struggling with his weight. It's me that he phones when he's doubting himself. It's me that he phones when he's needing advice about this next contract or whatever, and just stuff like that. But like Jonathan and some of the other guys we've worked with before, super approachable. There's open communication both ways, and there has to be, I think. Once you start getting in the way, you can almost get to a point where you're making some of these athletes choose between the skill coach and the strength conditioning coach or whatever, and it's not a good place.
No, and I've seen that so many times as well. I've seen other coaches doing it, and I've seen that lack of communication and ultimately it can hurt the fighters. If they're coming in, as you say, tired into a situation, beat up already because they've done way too much for the S&C coach, they're putting themselves at a great deal of risk, because if that's not communicated to James, and let's say I've beasted him for no good reason on a Tuesday night, and he comes in on a Wednesday morning or Thursday at higher level into that fucking brutal wrestling class, and he's still trying to give it 100%. That's going to end up in an injury, And who injured him? Was it the fighter? I would argue it was the strength and conditioning coach, because I should have, if that was me, and I send the guy in on a Thursday morning to that class having smashed him on the Wednesday night, you know, if I haven't spoken to James and I don't know that that's a heavy, strong, you know, effort that he's got to put in that Thursday morning, it's me that's injured him. That's the way I would look at it, because I've put him at risk. And so that's where that communication is absolutely vital, because I need to know when the hardest days are. James needs to know, you know, well, another simple example, maybe the same example really, is that if we speak, you know, on a Thursday morning and I've got such and such a fighter on the Friday or even the Thursday afternoon, my first question has to be, how did that fighter get on the Thursday session? How did they perform? And if the answer's either they were fucking awful, that was shocking, or they were firing on all cylinders, that was incredible, you know, if we could put them out now, that's perfect. Then both those situations make me dial everything right back, because if he's firing on all cylinders that morning, you know, I don't really need to push him, because that tells me that's all they've got that day. You know, if they're giving it 100% and it just looks everything crisp, then why do we need to beast them through another session? And like, you know, there may be reasons, but it's few and far between. And the flip side, if that individual has struggled to get through a session that the previous week they were just nailing it, then we need to do nothing more than active recovery and maybe look at, if it was a different individual or if it was me, talk about nutrition and maybe refeed them a little bit better, and everything becomes about recovery until the next time they're in with James. So, yeah, the fighters that we've worked with at like Billy Joe and Tyson and the guys down at Eagle Camp and stuff, we start to look at that as a multidisciplinary team. I don't know if you talk about things that way, James, or not, but that's the way I look at things, is that you've got these different aspects, you've got these different individuals, and we should be having meetings. We should be, you know, we don't have to all come and sit in the front room and have a coffee and all that kind of stuff. Everybody's got their own schedules, but we should know 2-3 days a week, hopefully every day, if we can see each other's live kind of programming and the data coming back, exactly what that fighter is doing. A quick call and seeing the data tells me what I need to do, is to ease off, hit the gas pedal, whatever, you know, and without that communication, it's just guesswork. And exactly as James said, it's also ego, you know, that's dangerous.
Yeah. And just something I wanted to ask you as well, you touched on like Instagram and stuff like that earlier. I'm dying to know what's some of the stupidest shit you've seen strength and conditioning coaches do on Instagram, social media. There must be a few things that have caught your eye and you're like, what the fuck is he doing? Or she doing, rather?
There's nothing mad happens anyway. There's a guy, what is his name? Naudi fucking something or other, functional something he was called. He had all kinds of things on pulleys and it looked like he was fishing and doing all this kind of stuff. And loads of fighters went to see him for a while. What the fuck was his name? Naudi, he'll come back to me after this and no doubt. So every now and again, there's somebody who turns up doing some real wacky nonsense, and a couple of fighters will buy into it, you know, and sometimes they're famous. I tell you who made a fucking prick of himself as far as strength and conditioning is concerned was fucking Tony Ferguson. What the hell was he doing? You know, jumping about the place trying to balance on the back of a stool and all kinds of stuff. Talking about how it was about his proprioception and balance and things, and he's just read a lot of words, you know, and you're like, oh fuck, just, and then what did he trip over a cable or something? The whole thing was like, he was just ready to go. Something was ready to snap with that guy, but he's kind of mental anyway. But you've got, honestly, I don't see a lot of mad stuff with strength and conditioning coaches. I see a lot of inflated claims. I see a lot of bullshit designed to baffle. You know, that's the stuff I switch off immediately. You know, people talking about stuff they clearly don't understand, but saying a lot of scientific words all in a row. And then what they hope is that the person reading it will go, oh my God, this guy's so intelligent, I can't even understand it. He's clearly the person for me. When mostly if you can read those words and understand them, they just said a lot of words, you know. So I see that a lot, you know, and you know, Instagram, if you follow me on Instagram, you know I don't know much about Instagram. So I don't know. I'm not very good with that kind of stuff anyway, so.
Surely you need to dust up these marketing skills, mate, and get yourself a bit more of a presence out there.
We are working on it. But I've been told that for about 15 years now. So it's going all right. It's doing all right. I haven't even got a website. We're getting a website set up, and we're trying to get some stuff out there and be a little bit more vocal. But
I've got to say, a lot of people have got time in their hands now. There's a lot of homeschooling. I'm sure you can find an IT teacher out there somewhere.
There's definitely not one in this house, that's for sure.
So just a few things I actually wanted to talk about, just sort of caught my eye that's happening about the MMA sphere at the moment. A name that's popped back up, Nate Diaz again. Everybody's bitches, obviously, as always, and he wants to fight Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira at 170. I mean, at some point with Nate Diaz, I don't know how you feel about this, if you want to jump in. Does it just become a bit of noise online? Because it feels like he constantly chimes in after a big fight, but nothing really seems to materialise. James, what do you think? I
go against the grain a wee bit with the Diaz brothers. I'm not really that into them. They've got a bit of a cult following in MMA. I do respect them, but I don't actually think they're that good, to be honest. Man. Like, how many times have you seen Nate Diaz just getting absolutely dominated in the UFC? His reputation got massively enhanced with the McGregor fights, and Connor's as well, to be honest, in that second fight, which was excellent. But it wasn't that long ago that RDA was like absolutely shutting him down and dominating him and stuff like that. And I think I don't know, they're just, what you said, they're just noisy. It's like they're so desperate to keep themselves in public attention. They've got to say something. And there's a bunch of them like that as well. Covington's like that as well. Even McGregor, to an extent, went through a spell where whenever there was a big fight, he has to come on social media and pipe up just to remind everybody that they're still relevant and stuff. But if Diaz has got that money for the McGregor fights and fucked off, and like he should have went on a run of fights there. He should have fought everybody. But he's not going to beat a lot of the guys at 55 or 70. And his brother's the same. Like his brother's not fought in something like 6 years. His last fight was maybe Anderson Silva, and it was absolutely shite. But people forget about these terrible fights these guys have been in. And they have a good fight every now and again. Nick Diaz they always bring up the Paul Daly fight, which was incredible. But it took Paul Daly to make that fight like that. The Gomi fight, which again was incredible. But they forget his fight against GSP was absolutely piss poor. His fight with Anderson was piss poor, and Nate can be the same unless he gets the right opponent. But it's a shame because they guys they can be fun to watch sometimes, and it's almost like they've just imagine being a fighter and not fighting for 6 years. You're not really a fighter anymore if you're sitting on the sideline. You're a martial artist training, and that's it. But I don't know what will happen with him. I think he's probably had all sorts of offers for the UFC because his name was quite hot for a while off the McGregor fights. But if he was smart, he would have capitalised on that and stayed busy. Instead, he's disappeared.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate Diaz, possibly Jake Paul if he beats Ben Askren. Could that be the big next money fight? Is that the next?
That's a problem, isn't it? That's a problem. That's a problem. I mean, that's almost the same problem James was just talking about, though, in a sense. Diaz, Nate especially, he pops out when his mouth starts to go and all the rest of it. And I agree. I don't think he's clearly an excellent fighter, but he's not on the same level as a lot of the guys that he says he's on the same level with. You know, and what it becomes about is almost as fucking daft as that Jake Paul thing. I mean, him calling out McGregor and then all the kind of daftness that followed on from that. And I don't really know how the Askren fight. Why did Askren become a kind of a second place contender to McGregor in his mind? It's the whole thing. It's very strange. But I think the Diaz brothers kind of fit almost that with much more credibility, obviously for obvious reasons. But they kind of put themselves in that kind of Jake Paul position. You know, I had to get fucking Gabriel, my 8-year-old, to tell me who the hell Jake Paul was in the first place. You know? So you got that. But if you're an MMA fan, you know, or let's say you're a new to MMA, you really bang into it and all the rest of it, you'll know of Nate Diaz for a couple of reasons. And you'll be told that Nick Diaz is a legend, but nobody's going to tell you why. You know, why is he a legend? It's because the two of them are mad as fuck. That's how it boils down. It's like they're just a bit crazy, and it's fun to watch them behave that way, you know. But because they are that way, they're also not doing the training properly. They're not, you know, from a strength and conditioning perspective as well. They're good that they can throw down with a triathlon now and again, but they're both weak as fuck, you know. And I think that, you know, that shows, you know.
Yeah, and it's almost like they've not evolved. Wrestling's always been a big crutch, and especially for Nate, Nate's been absolutely punished with leg kicks over his career, and we see what Dustin just done to Connor with low calf kicks. So, I mean, Nate's leg, it looks like it could potentially break with him. And obviously, I mentioned it there just quickly, the Askren Paul thing. Did you see Askren hitting the bag?
No.
Terrible.
What was that like?
I was just about to say it's to Jonathan there. We had Craig McEwen on last week, and he had to ask his kid who Jake Paul was, and apparently his kids reckon that Jake Paul would outbox Craig McEwen, who's like an actual elite level boxer, like 377 amateur fights, boxed at 2 Commonwealth Games, and like 24 pro fights, and his sons are like, Jake Paul would batter you. That's like, poor guy, man.
I hope you've got a sense of humour, because that'd be disheartening as fuck, wouldn't it?
That's what you're up against, but and just the last bit of sort of news that was out there, I wanted to quickly jump on. Obviously, Bellator announced the light heavyweight tournament, and obviously the fight everybody's talking about, Anthony Rumble, but going to get back in the Bellator cage, and Yoel Romero. That's going to be a pretty interesting fight, pretty juicy fight as well. Aye, it's announced.
Is it? I didn't realise.
And the other good thing as well now, I didn't even know this, James told me, Bellator now available, it's going to be available live on BBC iPlayer. So no more fucking jump about channels everywhere. Yeah, I saw that. I think it was James's post I saw that today on. So that's great news. That's great news, not just for the consumer, for us trying to sit and actually pick up on these fights. It's great to have a kind of a central point for exposure for the fighters, I think. So it's big. It shows that it's been taken seriously as well, which is good. It's been needed from Bellator, because, I mean, you needed Google Maps and a fucking maths degree to find the fights before, jumping between channels. It was an absolute nightmare. And if you're not a complete hardcore fan, you're just going to tune off. It was too much work for the average guy just to try and follow the fights. It was murder.
Go back to the Rumble and Yoel Romero. What's been talking about strength and conditioning? After he was active in the UFC, Rumble started smoking a whole. He's probably smoking a whole of the weed in the first place, but it became he had some kind of trade out of it, didn't he? And then he was in the gym and he just got massive. Now he's a dude that was massive anyway and cut ridiculously, wasn't he? But what is he getting down to light heavy then? Do you know what he weighs at the moment? He's fucking massive.
I don't know, because I think it was, like doing a powerlifting thing. It looked like he was
Yeah, he got real big. He was kind of bodybuilding and powerlifting. He got to like about 120 something kilos, and he wasn't too fat on it, you know.
Yeah. Do you think that was all natural?
No. That's the short answer. No.
It's pretty much the answer I thought. So there you go. Sorry, James, have we lost you there?
I've got a freeze frame on him here.
Yeah. I think James, are you back with us? No. We've lost Mr. ISO. They've announced that tournament. It looks good. Are you back in with us, James?
Yep.
Sorry, what were you saying there before you froze?
I don't think many of the guys in that tournament's going to be natural. The testing at Bellator is obviously pretty lax, but I seen the Russian guy in its favourite to win it. I never knew that.
No.
Somebody messaged me asking who I thought would win, and they'll tell me the Russian guy's the favourite of the bookies league.
Jesus, that's a prospect, isn't it? If Yoel Romero was clean in the UFC, he'd never been caught or anything like that, and if he decides to go on some supplements, that's going to be one scary individual.
I'm pretty confident Yoel Romero had a decent pharmacist, if I'm honest. I don't know. You can never know those things for sure, but I would venture a guess that he was on something. He might just be genetically freaky. You know, some of those guys are. That's why they make it to the top. But he is freaky. I think Rumble Johnson. You could see from when he went out of the UFC into the gym, and he was hanging about in the gym where it was kind of clear that everybody was juiced up. He just got massive. And he was talking about how he's enjoying getting real big and not having to run about a bit. So I'd be interested to see. What was the jiu-jitsu? He was in a jiu-jitsu competition just recently, wasn't he? What was
Chael Sonnen's submission under.
That was it. He looked skilled still. It's not like he was massively rusty or anything, but he looked slow and he was gassing real hard, real quick, I thought.
You just need to hope he's addressed it. I mean, to be quite honest, I think the UFC should just start a separate promotion where it's just a free-for-all. We'll just call it similar to Pride, and just let everybody do whatever they want. Get Wolverine back to being Wolverine and just have fun. Just have fun. So, just last thing I wanted to talk about, obviously, Jonathan, Project Vertical, as I said at the top of the show, we followed you on social media and watched the journey, and it looked amazing and extremely tough. Just before you tell us a wee bit about the experience and the journey itself, tell us what Project Vertical was about and what got you to do that.
So Fergus Crawley is a client of mine. He came to me about 3 years ago with an idea. He had attempted suicide, and I think it was 2018. And off the back of kind of coming through that and getting himself to a place where he felt more himself, he wanted to give back a little bit to the community. What he felt was, and what seems to be the case, is that most guys don't talk to each other about their mental health issues at all. If they do, it's all very macho and kind of at arm's length. And he felt that his problems occurred because he hadn't been communicating with people. So, long story short, he had an idea that he wanted to squat for 24 hours and try and break a world record. He came to me because I had an understanding of how to put together power and endurance efforts at the same time. That's a specialism of mine. I had to kind of warn him quickly that what he was entering into was more of an ultra endurance thing than it was anything to do with powerlifting. He came from a powerlifting background. And so I've coached him for 3 years doing these kind of mad challenges. But this year we had talked about it, and he had come up with the idea that we would do, or he was going to do, a vertical marathon. So the idea of the vertical marathon is that, as you climb a mountain, you gain sort of, you get some vertical gain, you accumulate vertical gain. And he wanted to try and see if we could accumulate 26.2 miles of vertical gain. So we did a lot of maths. We figured out how many times would we have to do, what mountain would we have to do, and we pumped on Nevis. But the idea of him going up and down this mountain on his own, suffering kind of on his own, just seemed counterintuitive to the message, which was that, if you're going to be suffering and you're going to be suffering with your mental health and all the things that go along with that, you would want to communicate that with somebody, and you want to make sure that you reach out to those people around you. So it became apparent quite early on that it would actually be a better effort in terms of getting a message out there if we did it together. I think that logic was actually mine, and I quite quickly regretted it after I realised what it was we had to fucking do. But so ultimately, the very baseline job, the project itself, was over 11 days. We were going to try and climb Nevis 32.6 times, so 33 times we were going to climb it. In order to achieve 26.2 miles of vertical gain. And in doing so, try and draw a lot of attention and get some money, charity money for men's mental health charities. And for the most part, it was successful.
Yeah, there was a couple of... and I mean, it's not like you went in like you done it in the peak weather, the best weather you could have in the year. You picked a pretty... not the best time to be doing it. So that just seemed like it was... just adding to the overall suffering of the experience.
Yeah, well, it was. He's been involved since the very beginning for that Movember campaign. So every project had to happen in November, and that was a big problem because the weather's. I mean, it's worse now. If it was a February campaign, would be pretty hammered, I think. But the weather was tough. It was real tough actually. We got caught out on day 1 and 2 with the weather, and it kind of scuppered the thing, to be fair. I say that kind of negatively, but in essence, we put together this goal. We'd said that we would do this thing 32 times in a row, which is massive. It's a huge undertaking. Nobody had ever done it before. Nobody had ever done anywhere near that before. And nobody had ever done a vertical marathon before. It was unheard of. there's little things that you can do called Everesting, which people do on bikes, and some people have done on foot, where you accumulate the gain of Everest. And then that's something that people have done. But we ended up doing Everest times 3 in terms of overall distance. But ultimately, getting up and down there 32 times was an arbitrary goal we'd set ourselves. Within 11 days was a kind of a made-up number we'd set ourselves as well. We started on the 1st, and we decided it'd be poignant to end on Remembrance Day because there was a lot of military guys involved. Mm-hmm. And so the whole thing was like we had set these numbers, and then we felt really compelled to bash them out. And once it became kind of apparent on day 2, in fact, because of the struggles that we had on days 1 and 2, that we couldn't do it, we had a bit of a problem there, kind of addressing that in our heads, that kind of felt like we were going to fail. But, you know, how can you fail at something that you made up, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there was experiences along the way. Tell me about, there was an experience where there was a rescue on the...
And that was day 1. So that's how it started. I mean, day 1, we were supposed to start at midnight, and we were going to start at midnight. We were going to do 4 ascents, so 4 back to back, right the way through. Try and do it within 24 hours and kind of get ahead of it. The idea after that was we would do 3 every day, and on the last couple of days we'd only have to do 2. And we only got 2 done. We had to push it back from midnight because it was right in the middle of Storm Aiden, which was 110-mile-an-hour winds. And basically, the mountain rescue, who luckily for us, kind of shadowed the project, they just said, "Just don't go up. You'd be fucking stupid to go anywhere near that now." So we just sat on our thumbs and waited until the daylight. So we cracked on at 6 that morning, and it was dreadful. It was really, really bad. I've been up that mountain loads of times, and I'm an experienced mountaineer in that sense. It's something that I've done for a long, long time, and that was one of the hardest climbs I've had. And it was just about buffering the wind. Normally, you just go up and down a wee bit wind. You know what it's like when you go outside and you try and stand sideways like Michael Jackson in the wind. Doing that up a mountain across the southeast face of the thing, and it's just blowing you off. And trying to keep your balance the whole time, you know, for 12 hours or something. That's hard work. And on the second summit, we got to the top, and it was, at this point, it was minus 17 or something at the top. Maybe minus 19. It was cold anyway, and we were about 200 meters from the top. And on the way down the first summit, we'd seen a young lass go up. She had all the gear. She looked like she knew what she was doing. I stopped to speak to her for a minute and said, "It's tough up there. You sure you're going to be all right?" And she's, I think I'll be good. And it's not up to us to be bouncers on the mountain, so we just let her go. But she had summited and she was on her way down. But when we got about 200 meters up, she was just clinging to the side of a rock, shaking, you know, and she'd gotten to a point where she couldn't see, there was hail kind of sideways. She couldn't see anything. The visibility was almost zero anyway. And she just got so scared, she kind of landed up in a bit of a panic state. And so when I got to, I just said to her, you know, "Are you okay?" Knowing full well she wasn't. And she couldn't answer. She didn't really have much in her. And she eventually said no. I said, "Do you want me to take you back down?" She says, "Yes, please." So Fergus went on. We agreed that he would summit so we could kind of accumulate the gain between us, so we wouldn't kind of lose out on day 1. And I cracked on back down with her, but it took about, what should normally take about an hour and a half, took about 4 hours to get down. Because I was climbing, holding on to her, carrying her sometimes, holding her hand, and I'm going backwards because I'm guiding somebody down the bloody thing. And it was pissing wet. Like say sideways, 110, all the things I've already said. So by the time I got to the bottom, she got down safely and she was good and all the rest of it. She was fine, but I had hypothermia. So I've been every time we went into the wind, I'd put my back to shield her. You know, I was opening my coat and hanging it over and stuff and giving her my goggles and stuff. So I got down and I'd take a pretty heavy hammering. And then I had to get on the next day and go again. And so by the time, you know, if you got a bit of hypothermia, you'd take a good week off, but I had to crack on. So by the time day 2 came, we were just fucking hammered. And we knew by about day 3, there was no way that we were going to get the whole thing done. So just after that, it became about doing as much as we could day in, day out. And retrospectively, it turned out that either day 3 or day 4, maybe even day 2 during that effort I've just described, I had grade 3 tears in both knees. I had ruptured the bursa in my right knee. So by the time, if you've seen the film, I was in tears in the truck at one point because I thought I was going to be kind of responsible for the failure of the whole thing, but I was in so much pain. And in the end, as I've done a few times before, I just cracked on, just kind of bit down on it and got through. But it took up until about 3 weeks past So just tail end of January there for me to be training again at all, even lifting any weights or moving about. I still can't run, so it's pretty hard.
I mean, obviously it's all for a great cause, and I think the other thing as well is if he hadn't been on that mountain, I mean, that girl's situation could have been extremely grim with the conditions you've just described there. So I think the girl's very, very fortunate in a sense that you were going back up the mountain, which not many people would have been. So it was a lot of luck involved there for her, and it's great that he's actually were going back up and got her, because that could have ended so differently.
I was delighted that we could have been there, mate. It was good to know. I mean, it threw a little bit of logistical problems on the Earth thing, but exactly as you just said, if we hadn't been there, if nobody had been there for her, she'd have not got down. That's for sure. Yeah, because nobody knew she was there either. She hadn't told many people, so just one of those things. You tell somebody that she hadn't got a way of communicating down the hill or anything to phone the police or so.
Yeah, and it's a bit cathartic as well, because obviously the project itself is about mental health, and it's about saving lives effectively, and that's what it seems he's managed to do in that trip. So you may not have hit your goals, but that alone, I would say, makes everything worthwhile.
It really did. If it ended on day 3, then we'd done a good thing. There's no big drama about it. I didn't do anything anybody else wouldn't have done, but so it's nice to have been there. But the other part of it, which has been really powerful, is that just carrying on and pushing through, getting the 11 days done, it spoke to so many people. A lot of people were watching on, and it attracted an audience of people who maybe had suffered in silence with mental health issues, and people that felt kind of the whole thing resonated with them. So we ended up with hundreds each messages from individuals who had been, a couple of them, at the point of being suicidal, and locked onto that program, locked onto what we were doing, and kind of felt that it spoke to them in a certain way and turned it around. And it's a cliche to say it, but if the whole thing helped one person, then it was worthwhile. And we know that we raised a total of just under £100,000 as well. So we know that money's gone somewhere to try and kind of highlight these things and keep that wheel turning. So ultimately, it was a great success.
Absolutely. Well, that's it. You suffered for the cause there, mate.
That's it.
and I think as well, though, it's like, obviously mental health is such at the forefront of conversation at the moment because of the situation we're all in, country-wise, globally. So it's a massively important subject matter at the moment.
Yeah, it became a real good catalyst for that kind of conversation to happen. And the same as everybody else's. It's not an easy conversation to have, but there was opportunities for Fergus and I both in the documentary that we made to say about our own struggles. I've been sectioned a couple of times when I was a young man for really quite severe mental health problems, and not something you chat about over a pint with people. But what that kind of thing helps you realise is that there could be somebody listening to this. Could be one of the two of you comes off the thing and says, what, mate, that's made me think, I've been suffering a wee bit, whatever it might be, And so as uncomfortable as it might be to start that conversation, put yourself in that situation. And the mountain was just a physical way of kind of proving that, if you like. It was like a metaphor almost, But the idea of being able to put yourself in that situation and trigger that conversation for other people, that's powerful, and I was pleased to be involved in it. So,
I think it definitely works, I think, man, because I was obviously keeping up to date with your kind of, it was almost like a daily log thing you were putting up on Facebook with pictures and stuff, and we were obviously stuck in the house with the pandemic thing, but it was like, I'm waiting on you posting this up. I'm waiting to see what's happening and what you're thinking and how you're feeling and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm sitting in the house fucking willing you on. I'm like, come on, you can do this. I think I messaged you a couple of times. I was like, come on, man.
You did, yeah.
But even the guys to the gym are like, have you seen what Jonathan's doing? It's brilliant, man. And that it was such a fucking mad challenge, man. I was like, Justin had put me on to Fergus. He's like, have you seen this guy Fergus at John?
I think I'll never anyway. Aye. That's right, on you go, keep going.
Justin's like said, go look at this Fergus guy. So he's obviously been doing these mental challenges for God knows how long. And then when you kind of outlined this, I was like, holy fuck, like this isn't normal. Like most guys do like I'll spar 20 rounds or do a sponsored walk up Tintle Hill or something like that. But just even all the guys I know were kind of following it, man, and it was making them talk about stuff that they maybe wouldn't normally talk about, which is, like you said, it's hard for men to open up about that shit.
Yeah, and in which case it's done its job, mate. You know, that's what it boils down to. If you've got, you know, when you think about it at its basis level, you've got guys from the gym who wouldn't normally talk about it. There's a great example if you think about it. You know, where are people most traditionally likely to be macho and fucking, you know, over the top stoical about things? It's going to be in an MMA gym or a, you know, a combat sports environment. Oh, we don't talk about things like that. Yet there's you saying, you know, which I'm not surprised about, but as you saying, you get the guys, you know, from the gym all talking openly about it and willing it on. You know, they're not looking at it going, this is stupid. You know, so I mean that kind of proves a point there in itself. And like I say, we got messages from loads of different places, loads of different people, different walks of life. You know, any kind of walk of life you can think of. We got something from somebody saying this has meant something to them because such and such. You know, which is a strange thing. Because it's kind of obvious. It kind of wills you to go on and do more. Like you say, people like yourself messaging and saying, "Seeing what you're doing, crack on, mate." You know, that's enough to make you think, "Fuck it, I will keep going." You know, and then again, that's a little metaphor for everything. You know, if you've got people around you, whether they talk to you every day or not, who can reach out and say, "We're rooting for you," then they can do that for anybody. They can do that for each other. You know, it's been fun to be part of. It really has.
Sorry, on you go, James.
See when your phone rings now and Fergus's name comes up on it, do you just like fucking push it away?
Punt it away. The joke is, this is ego coming into play now. Fergus is a young guy. He's 24, 25-year-old. I think he's just turned 25. So I've got 20 years on him, you know, and there's been ego all the way along with me with this, you know, because when he first came to me, he was saying, "I'm going to do this thing." And you were the guy I was told to speak to, not only because you know, from the strength and conditioning perspective, but I've done, this goes back to marketing we were talking about earlier on, James, is that I've never talked about half the things I've done. You know, I've run 100 miles on a broken leg, I've done this, done that, all this kind of crazy stuff, but I don't have the Instagram presence he's got. You know? So he's saying, "I'm going to do this thing," and I'm going, "I've done that before." And he's going, "Well, I'm going to do this other fucking mad thing," and I've done that before. So eventually there came almost a push for me to go, right, I'm going to have to do something here and whip this fucking young guy into shape, you know. And about 3 days in, I thought, shit, I'm not going to make it. I felt all 45 of my years that day, but in the end, God bless him, he made it to day 10 and had an injury himself, so it just goes to show. But we've developed a good relationship, actually, Fergus and I. He's coming on with me as a coach, in fact, and going to be part of the business, and we're going to work together and carry on. But he's way out ahead of me in terms of having these daft ideas, and you know, I sit cringing at night sometimes thinking about what the next one might be. Because now we know ego says I'm going to have to try and get involved.
Yeah, that's it. It's good, but I've seen this stuff online, even just out with that, just general quotes and stuff you put up. I quite like it, mainly Facebook, because I think I was sitting watching the telly one night, you put something up and I thought, fuck, I need to go out running or something now.
You did that, yeah, because then you messaged me when you were running.
Aye, I was like, fuck, sitting watching shite on telly, I'm like, I can't sit in this couch like an arsehole and just get out running. So it's good. Gets arseholes like me off the couch at times to go out for a run. So
all the while I'm sitting drinking beer and eating crisps and just posting up nice quotes. I don't do fuck all that.
Oh, fuck, I was thinking you were in the house doing some David Goggins shit or something.
3 months I've been sitting there getting fatter and fatter. Go for a run.
By the way, I tell you what, he gets you out for a run as well, David Goggins. If you're sitting eating fucking a packet of cheese and onion with a can of juice, just watch that, cunt, you'll be straight out the door. It's brilliant. Well, listen, thanks very much for coming back on the show again, Jonathan. As always, it's been a pleasure to chat to you, mate. I've really enjoyed having you on.
Good to be here, mate. I've enjoyed it myself. It's been good.
That's been brilliant. Well, listen, again, thanks very much for coming on, and obviously, as always, James, I appreciate you jumping in the show. And
no worries, man.
Well, lads, we'll end on that, and thanks very much.